Returning to the 80s, the first thing I did was go back to find the daughter my husband had intentionally discarded. In my past life, I had a difficult labor. I slipped into a coma before I could even glimpse my child's face. When I regained consciousness, my husband, with a heavy expression and a voice full of feigned pity, told me, "Honey, the baby didn't make it." That news hit me like a bolt of lightning, suffocating my heart with a pain so deep I thought I'd never recover. The year after losing her, I was the one who suggested we adopt a child. Yet as soon as his business began to prosper, he used the excuse of a failing spark to demand a divorce. "Lily, I don't love you anymore. Let's just set each other free." Even the adopted son I had struggled to raise, the boy I had nurtured into an outstanding college student, looked at me and said, "Mom, you can't help Dad's career anymore. You should just let go." The vicious wolf finally shed its sheep's clothing, and I gradually uncovered the entire truth. The adopted son I had cared for with all my heart turned out to be the biological child of my husband and his childhood sweetheart back in their hometown. Because of that child, he had ruthlessly abandoned me and our daughter, lying to me that she had died at birth. Dragging my sickly body along, I took every step necessary to sue him for divorce while searching for my lost biological child. But just as hope seemed to be within reach, my body could no longer hold out, and I collapsed in court. "Honey, don't be too sad. We're still young. As long as we're alive, we can have another baby." My head throbbed as if it were about to explode. The voice ringing in my ears was both familiar and foreign, a low, warm tone that only made my blood boil with irritation. Unable to take it anymore, I squeezed my eyes shut and screamed, "Shut up!" The world suddenly went silent, and my mind finally found a moment of peace. I rubbed my temples and slowly opened my eyes. My vision cleared to reveal the young, handsome face of Justin standing right before me, his eyes filled with worry and concern. I frowned, instinctively leaning back in disgust, but was immediately met with a sharp, searing pain in my lower abdomen. "Ah, it hurts!" The man in front of me quickly grabbed my shoulders to steady me. "Honey, you just gave birth. Your body is still very weak. You absolutely mustn't move around." The warm, real sensation of his hand snapped me into focus. I was alive again. I had been reborn, returning to the very day I had given birth. That suffocating moment of hatred and despair, dying before I could even get a divorce, was now soothed by the overwhelming joy of being alive. "I can handle myself. Go back to work," I said. "No, I'm too worried," he replied. "My mother will be here tomorrow. I'll stay with you until she arrives, and then I'll head to work." In my past life, at this exact moment, I was just a 22-year-old girl, an incredibly naive first-time mother. My child was gone, my husband seemed so attentive, and my mother-in-law was traveling over 1,000 miles to the city to care for me during my recovery. Back then, I felt nothing but gratitude. But living again with the soul of a 40-year-old woman, looking back at it all, I realized just how gullible I had been. "I don't need her. Call my parents. They'll arrange for someone to take care of me." My father was a high-ranking military officer, and my mother was the vice president of the city hospital. Before marrying Justin, I lived with them in the military housing complex, and we even had a housekeeper. It was only after our marriage that Justin began, intentionally or not, to manipulate me. He told me we had to live frugally, constantly reminding me how hard his parents back home had worked to put him through school. Meanwhile, he naturally took all the money I saved and sent it back to his village. He called it bringing his mother up to take care of me. But it was clearly just a way to bring her to the city to enjoy herself while leeching off my family. Just as I expected, Justin's expression shifted instantly. "You're a married woman now. It would be a burden to bother your parents just because you had a baby. And what would people think of you then?" In my past life, every time I planned to ask my parents or siblings for help, Justin would say those exact words. To save his pride, I had always endured and yielded. Looking back, I had truly thrown my heart to the dogs. I was being manipulated and didn't even realize it. "I'm not going to argue with you anymore," I said coldly. "If you won't call them, find a nurse. I'll just ask her to help me call my father." To save money, my husband had only paid for a general ward, one room for 10 people. Thanks to his stinginess, contacting my family was actually going to be quite easy in this environment. Seeing him prepare to launch into another long-winded speech, the opening act for his usual gaslighting, I immediately shut my eyes. "I'm thirsty," I said flatly. While he went to get water, I quickly reached out and grabbed the person at the next bed. "Sir, could you please do me a favor? Could you go to the nurse's station and call my mother? Tell her I've given birth." The man looked about 25 or 26, fair-skinned and clean-cut. Even though he was already a father, his face turned bright red like a schoolboy in love when I grabbed his hand. "Calm, comrade, please. Just take it slow. Let go of me first." His wife, a cheerful and open woman, just laughed and gave her husband a loud slap on the back. "We've been married 3 years, and you're still as shy as a teenage girl." She turned to me with a bright smile. "Don't mind him, honey. My husband has always been a bit bashful." I let go, giving them a weak, forced smile. "I'm so sorry. I was just in such a rush. It was rude of me. Could you two help me with this?" I recited the phone number for the hospital where my mother worked. I then felt around my person but couldn't find a single cent. I knew I had brought money and ration stamps before coming to the hospital. My eyes instinctively flicked toward the door where Justin had gone, then back to the couple. I said guiltily, "I'm so sorry. Can I pay you back later?" "Don't worry about it," the wife said. "We're all roommates here. Don't be a stranger." Before my parents arrived, I made sure to speak loudly so every patient and relative in the ward could hear. "Justin, I just asked this gentleman to call my mother. Make sure you pay him back for the phone call." Hearing that, my husband practically bolted upright from his chair as if he'd been stuck with a needle. "What? Didn't I tell you not to bother your parents? Why did you call them behind my back?" Under the strange looks from the people around us, I feigned innocence. "Justin, I had a difficult labor and I'm weak. I need someone to take care of me. What's wrong with calling my parents?" Aren't I right here? You could have just told me." As he spoke, he lunged forward to grab my arm. "No, I have to go call them back and tell them not to come." As he pulled at me, he grumbled, "I honestly can't believe you. Do you have any idea how much a long-distance call costs? How can you be so wasteful?" As he yanked on me, my entire body felt like it was falling apart from the pain, especially down below. I felt a surge of blood and the pain intensified. Seeing me drenched in sweat, my face contorted in agony, the other people in the room couldn't take it anymore. "Hey, buddy. Can't you see your wife is in pain? Let go of her." "Let go, or I'm calling the police. How can you even call yourself a husband?" No wonder she had to call her own family. Turns out she's got a real piece of work for a husband. In my past life, this man had been hailed by the whole ward as a model husband, but now his true face was being stripped bare in front of everyone. You see, without my constant yielding, he was never the good man everyone imagined. At that moment, someone turned to me and asked, "Ma'am, is he really your husband? How could he manhandle a woman who just gave birth like that?" I gave a forced smile, my lips trembling and my face pale. I just nodded slightly and whispered, "Before we got married, he treated me very well." My husband came from a rural background and was among the first group of college students after the entrance exams were reinstated. After living with him for over 20 years, I understood his fractured personality perfectly. On one hand, he was proud of his intellect, having passed the exams and escaped rural life. On the other hand, he was deeply insecure because he realized after graduation that being a bachelor's degree holder wasn't that grand. He still had to follow the rules, earn a fixed salary, and his promotion chances were worse than colleagues with connections. I suspect that's why he abandoned his childhood sweetheart back home, who had already given birth to his child, to shamelessly pursue me. Being surrounded and scolded as a bastard, Justin realized I had no intention of defending him and was forced to explain. "Wait, everyone is misunderstanding. I took time off to care for my wife. My mother is coming tomorrow to relieve me. My whole family cherishes my wife." Meeting everyone's skeptical glares, I played the naive part again. "My mother works right at the city hospital. She could have arranged for someone to care for me during my recovery. His mother has to get a travel permit from the village and take a long train ride just to get here. I told him my parents could take care of me perfectly fine. If he had just transferred me to the city hospital from the start, he wouldn't even have had to take time off. I don't know why he just won't understand." On the surface, I looked clueless, but every word clearly exposed my husband's true motives to the room. Even though he wasn't kicked out of the ward, he spent the time before my parents arrived doing chores in silence, not daring to utter a word. Every time he even opened his mouth, someone would immediately snap back at him on my behalf. I closed my eyes, trying to piece together every detail from my past life. Before I died in that previous life, I had found my daughter. I remembered clearly that she was left at the orphanage doorstep 3 days after I gave birth, which was exactly the second day after my mother-in-law arrived in the city. My husband was an arrogant man with few friends in the city. It was highly likely the baby was still in this very hospital. That's why he was so anxious, terrified that if I contacted my family, the truth would come out. It was a shame my degree was in accounting rather than medicine. I hadn't inherited any of the medical connections my mother had built. If I had, even though this wasn't her hospital, I could have tracked my daughter down instantly. "Hey, sister, you mentioned your mom works at the city hospital. What does she do there?" While I was lost in thought, Justin had stepped out of the room, and the woman from the next bed had come over to chat. I answered casually, telling her my mother's position. To my surprise, she suddenly became very excited. "What a coincidence! A few years ago, my mother went to the city hospital for treatment, and it was your mother who cured her. Talk about fate." During our conversation, I learned that she had a younger sister working as a nurse right here in this hospital. My eyes instantly lit up. "Ma'am, do you think your sister could do me a favor? I'll make it worth her while." "Oh, stop. If it weren't for your mother, my mom and sister might not even be here today. Don't be so formal. Just tell me what you need." I asked her sister to quietly investigate the movements of Nurse Lee from the maternity ward for the duration of this entire day. Especially keep an eye on whether she's acting strange or if she's carrying a newborn around the hospital floor. "My daughter, why didn't you deliver at the city hospital? Are you still in pain? Where is the baby?" The scent of antiseptic on my mother was even stronger than the smell in the ward, but to me, it was the most comforting fragrance in the world. I squeezed her hand tightly, tears welling up. "Mom, you're finally here." Justin rushed over, acting like the devoted son-in-law, eagerly offering her his chair. He behaved as if he weren't the same man who had just forbidden me from contacting her. "Mom, please, sit down. Let me get you some water." "Oh, Justin, you've worked so hard," she said. "I'm here now, so go home and get some rest. I'll take the night shift." "Mom, I'm not tired. I've already taken time off. I can handle it. You should go home so you can be fresh for work." "Honey, marrying you was my daughter's greatest blessing," my mother replied. "But you don't have experience caring for a woman postpartum. Just let me handle this." Before Justin could argue, I spoke up firmly. "Justin, go home. Mom is enough. It's not practical to have too many people cramped in here anyway." Justin was never a man of many words. In the past, if he so much as frowned, my heart would soften, and I couldn't bear to make things difficult for him. But now that I had changed my tune, he stared at me for a long time with an expression of deep, wounded betrayal. A 20-year-old version of me might have felt guilty, but the 40-year-old me only felt disgusted. "Why are you still standing there?" My mother didn't quite understand what was happening yet, but she instinctively took my side. "She's right, Justin. A man should focus on his career. Go on home." Under our coordinated pressure, Justin forced a smile. "All right then, I'll pick up my mother tomorrow. Once she's here, you can get some rest, Mom." Hearing that, I knew he still hadn't given up on bringing his mother into the picture. I decided to add more fuel to the fire. "Oh, right, Justin. I'm completely out of cash and ration stamps. Go home, then come back later to pay the hospital bills and the phone fee we owe the gentleman in the next bed." With his mother-in-law standing there, Justin didn't dare snap, but as he turned to leave, his face was a sight to behold. "Did you two have a fight?" my mother asked. I ignored the question, my anxious eyes darting to the man at the next bed. He nodded understandingly, patting his chest with a confident grin. "Don't you worry. Leave it to me. I'll make sure it's handled properly." Once the room cleared out, I pulled my mother close and whispered in her ear, "Justin conspired with a nurse to take my daughter away. He lied and told me she didn't make it." The look on her face was identical to the one in my past life, the first time she learned the truth that her granddaughter hadn't actually died. After a few seconds of silence to process the shock, she gripped my wrist, her gaze becoming terrifyingly stern. "Are you sure?" I nodded with conviction. I wasn't completely unconscious back then. I heard her crying, and I heard what the doctors and nurses were saying to each other. I was lying, but every word was a truth I had uncovered in my previous life. I pointed to the neighboring bed. "Mom, That woman's sister works here. She's helping me investigate a nurse who was in the delivery room that day." Seeing my dead serious expression, my mother turned grave. She immediately asked for the sister's name and department. "Sweetheart, I'm going to step out for a moment. Can you stay here by yourself?" "I'll be fine, Mom. Go, hurry. I'm afraid something might happen to her if we wait too long." "All right, don't worry. I'll handle this thoroughly. But you're in recovery. You have to look after your health, or you'll suffer for the rest of your life." The woman in the next bed had overheard parts of the conversation and remembered the favor I'd asked of her sister. Her eyes filled with suspicion toward Justin. She stepped toward my mother, offering gentle comfort. "She's right. Don't worry too much. Why don't you try holding my little one for a bit? Consider it practice. Dr. Miller, please don't worry. You saved my mother's life. Your daughter is like a sister to me now. I'll make sure she's taken care of." I didn't take her baby. My body was too weak, and with my mother there, my mind finally found some peace. I soon fell into a deep sleep. In my dreams, I was back in my past life. I had been told my baby was gone, and because I didn't recover properly, my health plummeted. Back then, my mother-in-law had acted caring on the surface, but in reality, she often used cold water to wash me and forced me to eat chilled food. "Oh, I'm so sorry, dear. I was so busy I forgot I'd boiled this water. It must have sat out too long. Should I boil it again? And I prepared this food for you, but it went cold. Let me go reheat it for you later." She and her son were a perfectly coordinated team. Not long after she moved in, she started complaining of backaches and knee pain, claiming she couldn't do any chores. So, before my first month of recovery was even over, I had become the maid in my own home. Meanwhile, they would drop hints to the neighbors about how difficult it was to care for a grieving, temperamental woman like me. Even my parents never knew that, after my mother-in-law arrived, the bulk of the housework fell on my shoulders. I lived in that exhausted, hazy state for a year. Then, my mother-in-law began pressuring us, first through hints, then openly, saying we should have another child. Then one day, I accidentally found a medical report on Justin's desk. It stated clearly that my uterus had been severely damaged during the difficult labor. The chance of me getting pregnant again was almost zero. The date on that medical report was from when I was still in my first month of recovery. Back then, because of that report, I had been the one to proactively suggest a divorce. Justin had knelt before me, crying that he loved me and couldn't live without me, begging me not to leave him. Moved by his plea and my heart softening, I was the one who proposed adopting a child. After we adopted Leo, Justin made countless solemn vows, constantly reassuring me, "Honey, don't you worry. In this life, you are the only wife for me. The three of us will live together in total happiness." Because of the adoption, I always felt a sense of guilt toward his family. So, when Justin suggested bringing his parents up from the countryside to care for them in their old age, I agreed without a single hesitation. Those two old people lived in our house like royalty, pampered in every way. Yet when they stepped outside, they feigned humility and acted as if they were the most hardworking, gentle souls. I carried all the burdens while they reaped all the praise. I even went as far as to beg my parents, people who had been upright their entire lives and never even favored their own children, to use their connections and pull strings to arrange jobs for Justin's siblings. In the end, when the masks were ripped away, the words they spat at me were unbelievably cruel. "Lily, you and your parents have such high-paying jobs, and yet you set me up with these trashy positions? And you expected me to be grateful? Lily, if your mother hadn't refused to let me into the city hospital, I wouldn't have had to marry that useless factory worker. I hate you, Lily." They seemed to have forgotten everything. The joy and the gratitude they felt when my family helped them establish themselves in the city. Now, they turned me and my parents into the villains, calling us selfish, pragmatic, and look-down-their-noses snobs. They trampled us into the mud, grinding us into dust until we were too humiliated to even lift our heads. All they remembered was the present. They were living comfortably off the profits from my husband's company, eating well, dressing in fine clothes, and dripping in gold and jewels like queens. How can people be so forgetful? To forget such kindness in favor of greed and power? Truly, the Miller family was rotten to the core, a bunch of absolute scum. I jolted awake, my entire body drenched in a cold sweat. This sleep was more exhausting than not sleeping at all. My body was spent and my mind was utterly drained. "Lily, are you okay?" Should I call the doctor? Auntie May, when did you get here? Your mother asked me to come take care of you. Look at you, you poor thing, you've grown so thin. Auntie May was our longtime housekeeper and a distant relative from my father's side of the family. After her husband died young and having no children of her own, she had cared for and loved my brother and me as if we were her own. Auntie May's care was 1,000 times more attentive than my mother-in-law's had been in my previous life. Unlike that woman, who always pretended to be so helpful while serving me food that hindered my recovery, Auntie May made sure I was properly nourished. After eating a full meal, my spirits lifted slightly. Auntie May, where is my mother? I'm not sure, but she told me to tell you to rest easy and recover. Don't worry about a thing, she's taking care of everything. I smiled and nodded, but the heavy stone in my heart still wouldn't let go. Before my mother-in-law could arrive the next day, my mother had arranged to have me transferred to the city hospital. Auntie May looked a bit surprised at my mother and me and asked, "Aren't we waiting for Justin to go with us? Did you two have a fight?" At the mention of my husband's name, the smile instantly vanished from my face. Oh dear, what's happened? You two always got along so well, why is this happening all of a sudden? My mother didn't give Auntie May a chance to ask more. May, every minute my daughter stays in this hospital is another minute she suffers. We'll talk more once we're back at the city hospital. After the transfer, since Auntie May was the one always by my side, my mother revealed a little bit of the truth to her. Justin is not a good man. It's not even certain if she'll stay with him. From now on, May, don't ever leave her alone with him. Auntie May didn't understand the whole story yet, but she nodded and followed suit. Knowing how to be tactful in speech and discreet in conduct was exactly why she had worked for our family for so many years without ever being replaced. Both my mother and I trusted her completely. After asking Auntie May to step out, my mother closed the door to the ward and turned to speak with me privately. Lily, do you remember if the baby had any distinguishing features? I immediately gripped her hand, my eyes lighting up. You have a lead on her, Mom. My mother looked slightly conflicted as she glanced at me. I do, but now we found 2 children. One of them is also an abandoned baby, born on the same day. My eyes blazed with light. Without a second of hesitation, I described my daughter's feature from my past life. She has a gray, heart-shaped birthmark on her back, right below her waist. My mother's face immediately relaxed, and her eyes brightened. It's good she has a specific mark. Otherwise, this would have been very difficult to handle. Because my daughter hadn't been properly cared for since birth, her body was thin and frail, and her cry was as tiny as a kitten's whimper. Thanks to Auntie May's meticulous care, 3 days later, she began to nurse. During that time, my husband brought his mother by several times, using the excuse of relieving Auntie May to care for me. Each time they came, I simply said one thing coldly. If you want to swap out the help, pay the bills first. After coming 2 or 3 times, he grew bored and stopped wanting to visit. After all, this hospital was where I had grown up. I had known all the doctors' faces since I was a child. The nurses, orderlies, and staff all worked here. The more Justin showed his face, the more people realized I had a husband who wouldn't even pay my hospital bills. In this day and age, a moral failing like that directly impacts how superiors evaluate your professional competence. Who would trust a man to handle important work when he wouldn't even care for his own wife during a difficult labor? On the day of my discharge, I turned to my mother. Mom, you're still close with Director Miller at Justin's factory, right? Of course, she replied. Before he retired from the service, he was your father's brother-in-arms. He used to hold you when you were just a tiny thing. That's perfect then. While Auntie May was helping me pack my things, Director Miller called Justin into his office for a private chat. In my past life, that animal Justin didn't just abandon my daughter, he left my parents to foot the entire hospital bill. In this life, if he dared to be short even a single cent, I would see to it that he lost his job immediately. When I reached the hospital lobby, I ran straight into my husband as he came rushing in, breathless. Before he could open his mouth, I struck first. Justin, you're just in time. Hurry and pay the fees. I'm about to be discharged. The expression on his face shifted from impatience to shock and then to sheer embarrassment. Honey, I didn't bring any money. I feigned total shock, letting out a loud gasp and stepping back as if I'd been struck by lightning. So, you didn't come here to pay the bills? You were planning to take me home empty-handed? What am I supposed to do now? Every bit of my salary was sent back to your family in the countryside after our expenses. How am I even supposed to leave? In one breath, I exposed his blatant parasitism, holding the purse strings and keeping all his wife's money, yet refusing to pay a single penny when she's hospitalized for childbirth. His face turned into a literal palette of colors, shifting from red to white to a sickly gray. No, that's not what I meant. You show up to the hospital with nothing but the clothes on your back. If that's not what you meant, then what is? I intentionally called out his name clearly so everyone nearby could hear. Justin, it's fine. I'm used to it. At worst, I'll just have to spend a few days at the police station. Though, I don't know if I'll still have a job when I get out. Hearing this, the crowd of bystanders began to whisper and criticize him. Everyone could see he was a lowlife. Someone immediately spoke up. Hey, Rady, tell us where this jerk works. We'll teach him a lesson. Yeah, a man like that doesn't deserve to be a husband, let alone a father. We'll help you get justice. Justin, is it? You're not leaving this lobby until you pay up, you hear me? My husband was completely frazzled now, his hands shaking as he tried to stammer out weak, meaningless excuses. But the fact remained, his boss had essentially sent him to the hospital to pay his wife's bills, and he had shown up without a cent. No matter how he tried to spin it, there was no denying the truth. I'd seen enough. I raised my voice to cut through the angry chatter of the crowd. Please let it go. My husband comes from the countryside. It wasn't easy for him to get through college. He worked so hard to get assigned as an engineer at the paper mill in North City. Please don't report him. It would be terrible if he lost his job. Lily, have you lost your mind? Justin hissed at me. We're married. What good does it do you to ruin me? Justin, I'm defending you. How could you misunderstand me like that? Ultimately, terrified that someone would actually follow through and report him to his superiors, Justin took off running like a sprinter to get the money from home. But by the time he came panting back and finished paying the fees, I was already in the car my father had sent, heading back to the military housing complex. I wasn't stupid enough to go back to that house to be cared for by a mother-in-law who was healthier than I was, not to mention cunning and ungrateful. My parents had kept my bedroom exactly as it was before I got married. Everything was preserved, only now the room held a few baby items, some new, some old, waiting for my daughter's return. The older items had been bought after my nephew was born. They were in perfect condition and thoroughly cleaned, ready to be used again. Lily, we were going to send these over to your place after the baby came, my mother said softly. But now, you just stay here. It saves you the trouble of moving things back and forth. Thanks, Mom. In an attempt to prove he wasn't a gold digger, or after our family's influence, Justin had never stayed a single night at my parents' house after we married. If he had seen the layout of my room, he would have called it wasteful. Do you know how long a family in the country could eat on what this furniture costs? He would have said. But everything here, from the desk to the decorations, came from my parents' hard-earned salaries. They were never extravagant people and never spoiled me excessively. Everything in the room was just the standard furniture and toys of an average middle-class urban family. In fact, every month, my parents donated a portion of their pay to help struggling former comrades or to support the widows and children of those who had fallen in battle. Neither my brother nor I ever grew up with wasteful spending habits. Justin's talk was nothing more than sour grapes, because he couldn't have what we had. In my past life, once Justin became successful, he lived in a massive mansion and drove luxury cars. A single ordinary meal of his could cost as much as the amount he used to claim could support a rural family for years. What was it he used to say? You earn money to enjoy it. If you don't spend it, are you going to take it to the grave? Even when I suggested making charitable donations to improve the company's image, he would arrogantly snap back. Why the hell should I spend money on the poor? Does that bring me a single cent in return? Lily, your family fell from grace long ago. Put away that hypocritical act. No one's buying it. On my first night back home, the nightmares of my past life returned to haunt me. In those memories, when I refused the divorce demand from my husband and adopted son, I fled the house, terrified of hearing more of their heart-stabbing words. To save money for Justin's business, and to ensure our adopted son's education wasn't interrupted, I had worked every dirty, back-breaking job imaginable over the years. My body had long been ravaged by exhaustion and illness. Choking on the anger they caused me, I collapsed on the side of the road and was only saved when a kind stranger took me to the hospital. When I woke up, the doctor told me bluntly, "You need immediate inpatient treatment. Otherwise, you have a year left to live at most." I didn't even blame my husband or son for wanting a divorce anymore. After finishing the discharge papers, I just wanted to go home and live out my remaining days peacefully with my family. However, when I stepped through the door, I didn't find the two of them frantically searching for me. Instead, the house was filled with the sound of happy laughter. "Dad, now that old lady Lily is gone, the three of us can finally be a real family," a voice said. "Leo, don't talk like that," a soft, melodious voice replied, sounding like honey in one's ear. "Regardless, Lily is the one who raised you. You must maintain basic manners." If it wasn't Sarah, Justin's childhood sweetheart neighbor who had come up from the countryside, who else could it be? I trembled with rage. Right then, my husband's voice rang out without a shred of shame. "Sarah, you're still as gentle as ever. If she hadn't stolen your place, as my wife all those years ago, you wouldn't have had to suffer in the countryside for so long. It's high time she gave it back." I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed into the living room, my eyes burning with hatred. "Justin, Sarah, how dare you two openly carry on this affair in my own home?" I screamed. "You crazy woman, stay away from my parents," Leo shouted, pushing me. "They were childhood sweethearts. If your family hadn't used their influence to force my dad to marry you, they would have been the rightful couple all along," Justin added coldly. "Lily, stop acting crazy. Let me tell you, Sarah is the only one I've ever loved. Not you. Just sign the divorce papers and make it quick." "That's right," Leo chimed in. "Even if you don't divorce him, it won't matter. I'm not your biological son anyway. Don't dream of me taking care of you when you're old." I was one person against three, and with my body weakened by illness, I didn't have much time left. In the end, the three of them joined forces to throw me out of the house like a piece of trash. For 3 hours, I lay curled up on the cold ground. No one asked if I was okay. No one cared. Finally, I had to crawl up myself, dragging my feet out of the neighborhood to catch a cab to my brother and sister-in-law's place. With their help, I officially sued Justin for divorce, demanding he leave with nothing. Since Justin was in business, his reputation was directly tied to the company's image, so he tried to negotiate privately several times to settle things quietly. It was through one of Justin's accidental slips of the tongue that I began to suspect my child might not have died all those years ago. I yielded and compromised at every turn, just to trade for small clues about my daughter. When I finally tracked the lead to an orphanage, I discovered 2 girls who shared the same characteristics: birth date, time of abandonment, even blood type. During the DNA test, one of the 2 children, a calculating little girl, secretly swapped my DNA samples with the other girls, stealing my daughter's identity. As a result, I missed my biological child once again. When I brought that girl home, Justin's eyes immediately changed. They were strange, wary, even a bit fearful. But at the time, I was so ill that all my strength went into fighting the physical pain, and I didn't notice anything unusual. Later, I learned the 2 of them had been working together behind my back to use me for their own ends. After that betrayal, my brother and sister-in-law began to doubt the girl's identity. They secretly took both girls for another round of testing, and finally, my daughter and I were reunited. But the relentless shocks, the betrayal, the lies, the loss of my child, and the late reunion had finally ground my body down to nothing. I couldn't hold on until the day I got justice for my child, nor could I help her reclaim what she rightfully deserved. On the very day the trial officially opened, just as the law finally began to side with us, I coughed up blood and collapsed before the bench, closing my eyes in bitter regret. Wah, wah. The faint cry of a baby pulled me out of the heavy nightmare. Frantically, I used my tear-soaked pillowcase to wipe my face, brushing away the cold sweat on my forehead. I quickly stepped down from the bed and gently scooped my tiny daughter, soft as a kitten, into my arms. As I soothed her with light pats, I carefully began to nurse her. "There now, Mama's good girl. Be good, don't cry anymore." No matter how thick the darkness of the night, as long as I held her in my arms, my heart, once desolate and freezing, was warmed. "Oh, my baby, thank God you're still here. Don't worry, Mama will definitely protect you. No one can ever take you away from me again." After she drifted off to sleep, I stealthily checked her diaper, and couldn't resist bowing my head to look once more at the birthmark on her lower back. I touched it lightly with my fingertip. Aside from being a bit darker in color and smaller in size, it was identical to the birthmark I had seen on my daughter's back when she was an adult in my past life. I let out a sigh of relief and smiled. It was good. This time, I hadn't mistaken her. My daughter still hadn't tasted the hardships of the orphanage. She hadn't been deceived by that other orphan to the point of losing a kidney. The one sent to the orphanage with her that year must have been the child my mother mentioned, the one who was beside my baby, the one who plotted to swap identities and steal the life that rightfully belonged to my daughter. My hands clenched tight and then released, alternating in a fit of suppressed rage. In the darkness, my eyes flared with light and then faded like a flickering flame in the dead of night. Until my daughter woke up again, her soft, tiny cry echoing through the night. My heart finally softened completely. I exhaled a long breath. Enough. The debts of the past life were paid in the past life. That girl already paid the price for what she did. I shouldn't condemn her again for things that haven't happened yet. Once my recovery month was over, I went with my brother and sister-in-law to the house that used to be the bridal home for Justin and me to open the final negotiations. Justin, we're getting a divorce. Every cent you took from me over the years, you pay it all back. Additionally, you must designate 1/4 of your monthly salary as child support for my daughter. That is your responsibility, not a favor. My voice was calm but left no room for argument, my gaze as sharp as a knife. The me of the present was no longer the submissive woman who endured everything for the sake of old feelings. Before Justin could even open his mouth, my mother-in-law jumped up first. She used a shrill, biting tone I hadn't yet heard in this life, screaming directly in my face. "What child? Didn't you give birth to a stillborn?" My brother stepped forward half a step, very politely but firmly swatting her malicious, pointing hand away from me. "Mrs. Miller, you're getting up there in years. You should know how to maintain your dignity. If you dare lay a finger on my sister again, don't blame me for being discourteous." Seeing this, Justin rushed forward to intervene, but my sister-in-law blocked his path with her hand. "Justin, you'd better not do anything reckless. One scream from me about harassing a woman, and if you end up catching a bullet for it, don't blame anyone else." Justin looked at my sister-in-law, who stood tall facing him. His face turned from red to black, choking on his own rage. "Sister-in-law, what kind of trouble are you causing with them? Divorce is no small matter. Where's the reason? I need a proper explanation." My brother and sister-in-law didn't answer. They simply leaned to one side so I could step forward and face him directly without flinching. I didn't need to raise my voice. Just standing there facing the man who had betrayed me and crushed my life was enough to make him unable to lift his head. I had a reason, and I was about to say every word of it to let the whole world know exactly what kind of man he was. "Because, Justin, you conspired with people in the hospital to plot the abandonment of the daughter I carried for 10 months and nearly died giving birth to." My mother-in-law refused to let it go, continuing to hurl the same filthy, toxic insults as before. Justin, however, was struck dumb, his mouth trying to stammer out a defense. That's not true. You're slandering me." My brother couldn't take it anymore and landed a precise punch on the coward's weak spot. Immediately after, my sister-in-law didn't hold back either, delivering a crisp slap to his face. "If we didn't have evidence, do you think we'd come here to waste our breath on people like you? Stop playing the good guy act. Go to the Civil Affairs Bureau and sign the papers, or don't even dream of keeping your job." "That's right," I added. "And you return my dowry and all the salary you took over the years. Otherwise, get ready to go back to the countryside and rot in the fields." At this, the two Millers began to tremble with fear, exchanging furtive, searching glances. Seeing this, I simply said coldly, "I'll give you 1 day to think about it. If you don't believe me, go ask your accomplice at the hospital yourself. I have the evidence and the truth." I didn't need to shout. I only needed to speak at the right time and place, and this time, I wasn't giving him a chance to flip the board. The next day, Justin looked as pathetic as a dog with its tail between its legs and finally accepted the divorce. "Fine, I agree to the divorce, but I don't have enough money to pay it all back right now." "That's fine. I won't make it hard on you. Then I'll keep this house, all right?" "What? How is that possible? This is factory-assigned housing. It's a public unit. What does it have to do with you?" My brother immediately slammed his hand on the table. This is your marital home, not your private residence. If my sister wasn't your legal wife, do you think you'd have been assigned a whole unit like this on your own? Not to mention, the bribe money to secure this welfare housing back then was paid for by my parents. Thinking that they felt sorry for such a struggling young couple, the two sides wrestled back and forth for a while, neither willing to budge. Finally, Justin's true colors bled through. With a face as thick as a fortress wall, he roared, "Fine. If you want to rob me of the whole house, then just take it. But don't dream of living in peace. I'm not getting a divorce. I'll drag this out until I die. I'll play dirty until the bitter end." That shameless, brazen look was no different from the piece of trash I had seen in my past life. It turned out he didn't just turn bad once he became rich. His essence was rotten from the very beginning. He was just too good at disguising it. I didn't need to be polite anymore and replied with a cold sneer, "Fine then. Let me send someone back to your hometown to ask around about your neighbor, Sarah, and see where that fatherless bastard child of hers came from." My brother had known about this beforehand, but hearing it again made his face flush with rage. "Justin, let me make this crystal clear. Don't think the Miller family is easy to bully. Your secret child is already running around. How do you have the nerve to sit here and demand to stay married?" Justin was terrified of ruin. In these times, being caught in an illicit affair with an illegitimate child could easily cost someone their position or even their life if a lawsuit followed. He didn't dare gamble. "Fine. The divorce, you keep the house," he finally forced out each word, bowing his head in defeat. After the divorce papers were finalized, shedding the weight of years of deception, Justin actually tried to play the good guy again. He put on a heartbroken act and asked, "Our daughter, how is she doing lately? Can I come by to see her for a bit?" But that shattered mask, despite the attempt at feigned sorrow, couldn't hide the calculating and opportunistic look in his eyes. I looked straight at him, my voice like ice. "The moment you threw her away with your own hands, you lost the right to even ask that question. By the time my daughter turned 6, the paper mill where Justin worked fell into a crisis and was eventually forced to shut down. Justin was unemployed and desperate, with no way to make a living. True to his nature, he turned back to me, hoping for a reconciliation. I only gave a cold, mocking laugh and exposed him. "Isn't Sarah officially married to you now? Why are you coming to me?" When he started stammering, I declared decisively, "Don't bother me again. I still have all the evidence that you married for gain and committed fraud. If you dare come near me or my daughter one more time, I will make sure you have no place left to live in this city." That same year, I officially resigned and took unpaid leave. Drawing on my experience helping Justin start his business in my previous life, I dove into the private sector. This time, thanks to the painful lessons I had already endured, I moved faster, went further, and became more successful than the Justin of my past life ever was. My story was no longer a tragedy but a rebirth, a journey of reclaiming justice for myself and my daughter. I poured my heart and soul in providing her with the best life and education. Once we were stable, I began taking her to broaden her horizons, learn new skills, and experience life safely as she grew. I once told her, "In the future, you don't necessarily have to go into business, but you must know how to. Knowing one more trade means having one more path in life. That is the spiritual inheritance I leave for you. No one can steal it away." When my daughter turned 18, the girl who had tricked me by swapping identities and nearly stolen her place in my past life appeared at my doorstep. She greedily surveyed the mansion I had built with my own hands, her eyes glued to the designer dress I was wearing and the sparkling jewelry on my person. With a smile on her face but calculation in her eyes, she blurted out, "Mom, I'm your biological daughter. That other one is just a fake. We can do a DNA test to prove it." With just one look, I could tell she had also awakened with the memories of her past life. Her gaze, her expressions, her attitude, it was all the clarity of someone who had undergone reincarnation, just like I had. But the biggest difference was that I woke up to protect those I loved, while she woke up only for deception and ambition. I immediately called the police to have her arrested on the spot. Watching her being handcuffed, I looked coldly into her eyes without a shred of pity. "Listen, kid, did you think I'd fall for such a Bush League scam? You think I don't recognize my own daughter?" Since she had returned with her past memories, I saw no reason to hold back my revenge. I pulled out my phone and called my associates. "Hello? Help me look into someone." As expected, her nature hadn't changed. She was still the same type. Fraud, embezzlement, debt evasion. She had committed every crime in the book. And so, in the very year she turned 18, her first year as an adult, she was officially sentenced and sent to prison. By the time my daughter was 20, another person from the past appeared. Leo, the child I had raised with my own hands, who had once viewed me as his mother but ultimately betrayed me. He stood before me without a hint of hesitation and said arrogantly, "Mom, why didn't you adopt me in this life? I'm the one you should be training as your heir, not someone else." He thought he deserved to be treated like that identity-swapping girl from before. He thought he deserved a second chance to live off the back of someone else again. Perhaps it was because my wealth was truly too attractive, for Justin and Sarah also came rushing back, swarming around me like flies to honey. In the old days, their secret affair could still be used as a threat, but now, dealing with people who were shameless to the bone, those things no longer had any effect. I generously gave the two of them a free gift, a true reunion, where they both appeared before me at the same time to perform their little farce together. Afterward, I turned to my daughter, who was standing by my side, witnessing the entire spectacle from start to finish. "Do you see that, sweetie? People who spend their lives daydreaming, wanting to reap rewards without ever putting in the work. This is exactly how they end up. My daughter, as long as you live a kind life, work hard to be a person of integrity, and follow the law, I will be satisfied." She gripped my hand tightly, a steady look in her eyes as she smiled and said, "I know, Mom. With you as my role model, how could I ever become someone like them?" The sunset dyed the entire sky red, stretching our shadows out long, so long that I almost believed this moment could last forever. My daughter is truly wonderful,"